It is midnight in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 p.m. on the first Monday of February here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. Now, breaking its week-long silence, North Korea proposes a working-level meeting this week with South Korea on holding family reunions. Seoul proposes meeting on Wednesday. And the U.S. Federal Reserve's QE tapering decision sparks concern about capital outflows from emerging markets, keeping Korea's financial authorities on their toes. And prosecutors seek a 20-year prison term for a leftist lawmaker accused of plotting to overthrow the South Korean government in the event of a war on the Korean Peninsula. Now, we'll have those stories and more, but let us begin with North Korea's highly anticipated response to a proposal about family reunions. Now, Pyongyang has suggested the two Koreas meet for working-level talks this week to discuss the possible resumption of reunions for families separated since the Korean War. Now, for more, let's connect live to our correspondent Hwang Sang-hee at the Unification Ministry in Seoul. So, Sang-hee, give us the latest.
Kanyang, it looks like the two Koreas will meet for Red Cross talks this Wednesday to discuss the details on resuming the long-suspended reunions for families divided by the Korean War. This comes after North Korea sent a short message earlier this morning saying that the two Koreas could meet for working-level talks either this Wednesday or Thursday at the North Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom. Shortly afterwards, South Korea's Unification Ministry said it proposed meeting on Wednesday. At the meeting, the two sides will discuss when and where the reunions will take place. The response comes a week after South Korea's initial proposal, which included holding the reunions from February 17th to the 22nd at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. Kanyang?
Now, Sang-hee, if the two Koreas do meet later this week for working-level talks, that leaves them less than 2 weeks until the proposed reunion dates. Of course, the proposal by South Korea. Is the third week of February still viable?
Well, Ganyang, now that question was asked during a press briefing here at the Unification Ministry earlier today. Unification Ministry spokesperson Kim Il-do said that actually he refrained from giving a clear yes or no, but said that while the exact date must be discussed with the North, South Korea will push to hold the event as soon as possible, considering the urgency of the matter. Millions of Koreans were separated during the Korean War, and we must keep in mind that time is running out for elderly family members to see their loved ones one last time. North Korea may make a counter-proposal on the dates of the reunions, possibly to hold the event sometime after joint military drills between South Korea and the United States that will start at the end of this month and run through April. Seoul and Washington say the annual drills involving thousands of troops are purely defensive in nature, but the North views it as a war game. South Korea had earlier left open the possibility that the reunion dates could be changed at the North's request, saying it was willing to put it under consideration if it was for justifiable reasons. Kanyang?
Thank you, Sang-hee. That was our Hwang Sang-hee reporting on North Korea's response and South Korea's proposal for family reunions from the nation's Unification Ministry. So North Korea, after days of silence following an initial proposal from Seoul last week, agreed earlier on this Monday to hold talks with South Korea on organizing a rare reunion event for families separated by the 1950s war between the two sides. So why the late response, and does Pyongyang really mean it this time? We have live on the phone Dr. Andrei Lankov, a professor at Seoul-based Kookmin University. Good afternoon to you, Professor Lankov.
Good afternoon.
Now, first off, what can we read into North Korea's delayed response to Seoul's proposal for working-level talks? It's been a week. And if the working-level talks were to take place this coming Wednesday, would it still be physically possible for the reunions to be held on February 17th as Seoul had wanted?
Talking about the February 17th, I think it will be extremely difficult or even impossible. Because it's a very, very tight schedule. Having said that, it's not clear why the North Koreans delay the answer, and as a matter of fact, it's not clear what is their major goal. There are two possibilities. First, it's possible that North Koreans are actually trying to get better relations with South Korea because they have troubles with China, and they did openly admit, it was a very unusual, but they did openly admit in December that they are unhappy about conditions of trade and economic exchanges with China. So counterweight Chinese presence, and China nearly controls their foreign trade and foreign exchanges, they need South Korea, they need South Korean money. So they might be interested in better relations, and it's a nice humanitarian gesture to have the meetings. However, there is another possibility, and currently it seems to be more likely, that they really are preparing for a wonderful show, political show, similar to what we saw last year in March and April during the similar joint exercises, when the North Koreans began to drive tensions very high, and they formally declared war on the United States. The United States didn't bother to notice, but North Korea last year did declare formally war on the United States. So it's quite, and they demanded evacuation of the diplomatic personnel and so on and so on. It was very unusual, very high-pitched rhetoric last year. So it's quite possible that they make these proposals, and then the joint exercises will start, and they will tell the world in their own public, look, we were so nice, we were so good, we were so kind, but these South Koreans didn't change their mind. They have this joint exercise with the United States, and it's not really exercises, they're just massing troops, so they will invade us next week, and we know it. We have to be prepared. We have to, be ready to fight because we are going to be invaded. As these fake exercises usually is really an act of aggression, which will happen very soon. They will drive tensions high, and if somebody starts asking questions, they will always can say, we were nice, we wanted family reunions, we wanted better relations, but the South Koreans, as usual, again showed their aggressive nature. So is it a real way to improve relations to get South Korean aid, or is it propaganda exercise to put blame on the South Korean side? We know not. We have to wait for another couple of weeks at most.
Of course, North Korea being so unpredictable, the only thing we can do is wait for their next move. So, Professor Lankoff, basically your view on this North Korea's proposal for holding reunions is rather negative, I suppose. Is there a possibility that the reunions could actually take place after the South Korea-U.S. joint drills, in your view?
Well, once the joint exercises start, I don't think the North Koreans will agree to have reunion. But to make things clear, I don't see it as a negative proposal. I believe that it's likely that it's essentially a part of propaganda efforts, whose major aim is to put blame for the future crisis North Koreans are going to manufacture on the South Korean side. Having said that, we cannot completely rule out that we are dealing with an authentic proposal. So they do want better relations, and therefore I would suggest that their proposal should be taken seriously anyway. It's not necessarily kind of fake proposal, but it's likely to be. I'm not certain. It might be, but we should behave as if it's real. It's advisable.
All right, and we'll definitely get a hint of what's going on in the minds of the North Koreans, at least when we meet them on Wednesday. Dr. Andrei Lankoff, professor at Kookmin University, thank you so much for your insights this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All of the day's important events close to home, around the world.
Second half last, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
The legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring.
Now, prosecutors are seeking a 20-year prison term for Unified Progressive Party lawmaker Lee Seok-ki for conspiring to overthrow the government. At the Suwon District Court on Monday, prosecutors said in their closing statement the leftist lawmaker should be sentenced to 20 years in prison and demanded that he be stripped of his right to be a lawmaker for 10 years following his release from prison. Lee is accused of leading a pro-North Korea group called the Revolutionary Organization, trying to overthrow the government and establish a socialist country. Now, he has consistently denied the accusations. Meanwhile, as part of its nationalist campaign, Japan is engaging in a meticulous scheme to stop the U.S. state of Virginia from using the Korean name East Sea, as well as Japan's name Sea of Japan, when referring to the body of water between Korea and Japan. While Tokyo has hired a lobbying firm to pile the pressure on Virginia, the bill, which requires school textbooks in the state to use both names, is inching closer to passing the state legislature. Our Yudian reports.
This is a service contract between McGuire Woods, one of the biggest lobbying firms in the United States, and the Japanese embassy in the U.S. The contract contains various ways to stop Virginia's General Assembly from passing a bill that would allow textbooks to note the Sea of Japan is also called East Sea. The bill, which was passed last Thursday, is important to the large Korean American community in Virginia, who see the current sole designation of the body of water between Korea and Japan as Sea of Japan as a painful relic of Japanese occupation back in the first half of the 20th century. The contract includes ways to explain why calling the body of water East Sea is wrong, and also plan to form protests against the Korean American community calling for the adoption of the new title. The contract also included ways to make the new governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, veto the bill if it did pass the full House. The documents actually revealed that Japan's ambassador Kenichiro Sasae had already sent a letter to McAuliffe in December, threatening that economic ties between Japan and Virginia will be damaged if the bill was enacted. It's highly unusual for a foreign embassy to be actively involved in a local state's legislation, so the findings are expected to cause quite a stir. Despite the Japanese embassy's efforts that cost them $75,000 over the span of 3 months, the bill was passed last week by a House Education Subcommittee, and it now heads to the full House Education Committee. Chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, Pat Mullen, says his party supports the bill, adding that all students in Virginia should have a thorough understanding of problems in the world. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Now, the Korean government has unveiled its second batch of tourism promotion measures, mainly focused on enhancing domestic tourism for Koreans. In a meeting presided over by President Park Geun-hye on Monday, the government laid out plans to establish so-called tourism weeks in spring and fall, 22 days in total, to spread the nation's tourism demand over the year, which currently peaks in the summer season. Well, the Tourism Ministry said, and the Education Ministry are also considering closing elementary, middle, and high schools for short-term vacations over these period. President Park called for policies in line with the public's rising standards and those that bring out the unique characteristics of each region. Now, shifting gears, in the wake of Korea's largest ever personal information leak, financial regulators have slapped a 3-month business suspensions on 3 of the nation's leading credit card companies. This comes as the government takes more steps to better secure the public's personal and financial information. Here's our Connie Kim with this report.
Korea's financial regulators are coming down hard on 3 credit card companies whose customer data was stolen in the largest personal information leak in the country's history. The Financial Services Commission and the Financial Supervisory Service will suspend the business operations of KB Kookmin Card, NH Nongyup Card, and Lotte Card for 3 months, starting February 17th. Under the terms of the suspension, the companies will be banned from taking on new customers, issuing card loans, or processing cash advances. Existing customers, however, will not be affected as the suspension does not ban the firms from providing financial services to them. The suspension is the first in over 10 years when credit card companies indiscriminately issued credit cards that led to mounting individual debt. Last month's leak, which affected at least 20 million people, sparked concerns the data could have ended up in the hands of scammers. The estimated compensation for mental damage caused to customers by the data breach is expected to reach nearly $160 million. As another part of the punishment, the CEOs of the 3 firms are to face punishment depending on their accountability. With the public still up in arms over the leak, Prime Minister Chung Eun-won said Sunday that law enforcement authorities will begin an indefinite crackdown on those who illegally circulate or use leaked personal data. However, concern continues to rise as it turns out not only credit card holders' information could be at risk. Following an external audit, the Financial Supervisory Service confirmed Monday that the data of 51 customers of the Prudential Life Insurance Company of Korea has also been leaked. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And here's a piece of troubling news. More and more college-educated Koreans are neither working nor looking for a job. Statistics Korea said Monday that the number of economically inactive people with at least a college degree was more than 3 million in 2013, which is a 3.2% increase from the year before. Now, while just 10% of college-educated people were part of the economically inactive population 15 years ago, the percentage rose to 15% in 2005 and to nearly 19% last year, meaning 2 out of 10 college graduates fit into this category. Meanwhile, the number of college-educated employees is also on the rise, a result of academic inflation in this country. The college entrance rate in Korea stands at over 70%. Now, Seoul shares moved lower in early trading on this Monday after a 2-day holiday closure last week, catching up to news of the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to further trim its stimulus, while China's soft factory data added pressure. The Fed on Wednesday announced an additional $10 billion cut in its bond purchasing stimulus, stoking volatility and capital outflows from emerging markets. Well, analysts here in Seoul are saying that despite its firm fundamentals, the Korean market is still an emerging market, unable to fend itself from the Fed's tapering influence. However, with time, the market will have a chance to show the world that it is different from other emerging economies, but only under the premise that China's economy does well. Well, as for the local bourse, as of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was down nearly 1% at 1922.5. While the tech-heavy Kosdaq was also trading in negative territory by 0.25%. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading weaker against the greenback at 1,083.5 won. Now, the scale of the oil spill that occurred last Friday off the southern port city of Yeosu here in Korea is much larger than previously reported. The head of the Yeosu Maritime Police Department, Kim Sang-mi, said at a press conference earlier this morning that the amount of oil spilled was 164 tons, which is over 200 times greater than previous estimates. The spill occurred after a Singapore-registered tanker hit a landing bridge last Friday as it tried to dock at Nakpohang Harbor, causing 3 oil pipelines to rupture. The pipelines are operated by GS Caltex, which provided the original spill estimates. Now, Kim added that the tanker was going at about 13 kilometers an hour when it was approaching the port, more than 3 times faster than the 4 kilometers an hour recommended as safe. And now it's time for our first arts and culture segment of the week with our Lee Tae-ho, and he is here to tell us about an upcoming film with an unusual, very unique source of funding. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
So what is so unique about the funding of this upcoming film?
Well, first off, the production and the shooting of this film was suspended completely due to a lack of funds, but everyday regular people came to the rescue of the film and funded it through crowdfunding. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. The film Another Family revolves around a taxi driver named Sang-gu and his daughter Yoon-mi, who gets a job at Korea's biggest corporation. Sang-gu is overjoyed at his daughter's accomplishment, but that joy is short-lived. Within 2 years, she is diagnosed with leukemia, which she contracted because of her work, and she is unable to get the treatment she needs.
It is a film that raises many issues, but ultimately it is a film about family love and a father's love for his daughter. And I think that is where audiences can get the most from it.
The film, which premiered at the Busan International Film Festival last year, is based on a true story. There was an ongoing lawsuit related to the real-life story that impeded the production process, so finding funding was difficult and the producers ran out of money early on. But the production team launched a crowdfunding site, and the film was saved from the scrap pile by regular people.
When the film first got started, we had no idea it would wind up like this. But to our surprise, many people were interested in this story.
The site eventually attracted donations from roughly 8,000 people who together contributed roughly $280,000. The rest of the $1.4 million budget was provided by another 100 donors.
Awareness about social issues like these can be spread to more people through movies than through books. So when I heard the story was going to be made into a movie, I thought it was a good idea.
I got involved because I'm going to be a father this year. And I wanted to prepare myself for fatherhood.
Another Family is the first commercial film in Korea to be financed by crowdfunding, which is a strategy that could one day bring other great stories with not so great funding to the big screen.
Well, crowdfunding is definitely another very useful way of, I suppose, securing funds to make documentaries and other kind of films. But for a commercial film, I know that this is a first, so we'll have a precedent for more films to come. But you have another event that definitely does not have any trouble securing funds.
Definitely correct. Now, this time of the year, many fans of the American sport of football are ecstatic about the big game. But now with the game over, let's go ahead and take a look at what the best commercials during that game were. It's the time of year that fans have been waiting for. It's time for the year's best commercials. That's right, the Super Bowl. The biggest game of the year for the American sport of football has traditionally had the highest prices for the airtime in between plays. And this year was no different. This year, a 30-second spot cost a whopping $4 million. And once again, cars, celebrities, and humor dominated the fair. The most anticipated commercials included offerings from two top Korean companies. Korean automaker Kia, whose hamsters were a huge hit last year, has engaged Lawrence Fishburne to reprise his role as Morpheus from the Matrix series. Korean automaker Hyundai will also be showing an ad for its brand new luxury Genesis sedan. And the point of the flashy and flamboyant ads that air during the big game?
You're being watched by a room full of loud people paying attention to a game, sometimes drunk. So we have a saying around here, it's like you got to reach the drunk guy in the back of the room.
Fashion brand H&M is again featuring international soccer star David Beckham to advertise its products. It has also joined forces with television makers Samsung for an interesting marketing twist.
H&M is the first brand doing T-commerce during the Super Bowl. So we are going to be that if you have a Samsung Smart TV, while you're watching the game and you see the commercial, the collection will appear around the commercial. So you're going to see it. Then you can click on it and you type in your mobile number and it leads you into H&M.com and you continue the shopping.
These are just the tip of the iceberg, along with a slew of other big-name companies such as Coca-Cola, Budweiser, and Jaguar, all featuring their best commercials with enough big-name celebrities starring in the ads to make even the best film directors jealous.
Well, you know, it's always the case every year. Not only is the game a big, I suppose, interest for everyone, but the commercials that gets to be played during the game or in the middle of the game is actually a big entertainment value for everyone across the world.
That's right. Now, and I think in many cases, the commercials and the big-time ads that make a lot of noise and are really popular on SNS, I think the marketing effect goes longer than actually the game itself. So the large investment for these big companies can definitely be worth it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Taeho, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
All right, let's now turn to our Michelle Park, who joins us again for the new year at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. Michelle, today is the first Monday of February, and the weather seems to have gotten much colder than the weekend.
That's right, Kanyang. By the looks of the drop in temperatures, the winter seems to have come back.
Right, and when can we expect this coldness to ease up then?
Well, this cold snap will continue until Thursday, putting most of our daytime highs around 0. Also, we can even expect the temperatures to decrease about 10 degrees. For more details, let's go over to our satellite map. As you can see, we have clear skies for most parts of the nation, and this is due to the high pressure. And we can also expect a cold wind coming from the west coast. Going over to the readings, the daytime temperatures have dropped compared to yesterday. Seoul will top out at 0 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak to 6 and 14 degrees respectively. Now down onto Jeju Island, it's going to be a cloudy day. Dokdo peaks at 4, while Mount Kumgang tops out at -1. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for that. And that's all from us at this hour. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I will be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.